recipes. They're chocolate chip walnut muffins, and they're a little bit healthy and a little bit sweet, and I will have the written out instructions for you at the end of this video. So let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to start with the walnuts, and I've coarsely chopped them, and I'm just going to toast them in an 8-inch skillet under kind of lowish medium heat. And you really have to watch these because they have a tendency to burn really quickly. So you just want to toast them until they get fragrant and lightly browned. It'll take about 5 minutes. And I'm using about 1 cup of chopped walnuts. I usually don't measure it, I just put enough in the pan to cover the bottom of the 8-inch skillet. Now, I don't know if you can see on the camera, but they have gotten nice and lightly browned and they smell delicious. So I'm going to turn the heat off, set them aside, and prepare the rest of the ingredients. So you're going to need 2 mixing bowls for this muffin recipe, and I'm going to start with a larger bowl. You'll have a larger and a smaller. So I'm going to start with the larger for my dry ingredients. And the first thing I want to do is I want to grind up some oats, and they're just old-fashioned oats that you buy for your oatmeal. I'm going to start with a heaping 1/4 cup, and I'm going to put it in my coffee grinder. And you can see there's a little metal area where the blade is, and I just kind of fill it up to the top of that metal area, and it is about a heaping 1/4 cup. Again, it does not have to be exact. So there you go, and I'm gonna roughly grind them. That looks pretty good. And I'm going to put them in a 1 cup measuring cup. And it turns out to grind up to about 1/2 cup of oats. And then I'm going to top that off with flour. And you can use any kind of flour you like. This is just all-purpose flour. And that goes in your large mixing bowl. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grind up flaxseed. And I buy these big bags of whole flaxseed. This one I think came from Walmart, and it's organic, but you can pick them up anywhere these days. Again, the same amount, 1/4 cup, right into the coffee grinder. I'm going to do the same exact thing. Put them in my measuring cup, my 1 cup measuring cup, and top it off with flour. Level it off into a large mixing bowl. And my next dry ingredients, there's a tablespoon of baking powder, a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda, and a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. And I'm going to put that right in there. And I'm going to take a whisk and whisk those together. And to these dry ingredients, I'm actually going to add the chocolate chips now. And this is about 3/4 to 1 cup of chocolate chips, and just do it depending on how chocolatey you want your muffins. And those are your dry ingredients, and set that aside, and I'll start with the wet ingredients. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is mix my wet ingredients, and I'm using my smaller bowl, and I'm going to whisk 2 eggs together. Try not to get shells in there. Okay, I'm just going to whisk those. That looks pretty good. Now I'm going to add 3/4 of a cup of buttermilk. And since it is kind of thick, I like to use my rubber spatula to get it all out. Okay, and I have melted a 1/4 cup of butter, and I've added to it a 1/4 cup of oil. In this case, I use canola oil. Sometimes I use coconut. It's whatever I have on hand. And okay, and to that, I'm going to add a teaspoon of vanilla. I'm going to whisk that together. And even though this is my wet ingredients, I'm going to add 1 dry ingredient, and that's my brown sugar, because I like to have it melt in the wet ingredients. Kind of, not really melt, but dissolve in there. So I'm going to use 1/3 of a cup of brown sugar. And you really want to pack it. And again, I just dissolve it in there, because I found when I add it to the dry ingredients, it tends to stay pretty lumpy. Okay, that looks really nice. I'm going to combine the wet ingredients with the dry ingredients. To combine the wet ingredients into the dry ingredients, I like to create a little well in my dry. And I'm just going to pour my wet ingredients into the well. And I'm going to fold them together. And the key with this is you don't want to mix it vigorously. You just want to stir it, fold it gently. And I'm going to dump in all my nuts. Fold those in. And this is why I use the rubber spatula, because you can see the dry ingredients get trapped down below. Okay, now I'm ready to fill my muffin tin. I have my 12-cup muffin tin. I'm going to lightly spray it with nonstick cooking spray. And I just like to go through each one. And ready to fill. And I just kind of eyeball it. And you can see the batter has kind of puffed up a little bit from the baking powder and the baking soda, which is kind of nice. And so I just kind of eyeball it. They say in most recipes to fill up 3/4 of the way, but this makes quite a bit of batter, and I need to fill mostly all the way up. So I'll keep filling, and I'll meet you back here. The cups are all filled. I'm just going to go around and clean off any area where I spilled. And now I'm going to put this in the oven for about 15 minutes at 400 degrees. And I'll meet you back here. They actually baked for a little less than 15 minutes and got done early, so set your timer for 13 and then start checking them. All ovens vary in their degree of heat. And they just slip right out. And I'm just going to keep taking them out, and I'm going to let them rest for 5 to 10 minutes before I give them a taste. They come out a little crunchy on the outside and moist and chocolatey on the inside. I hope you give this recipe a try, and they also freeze well. I usually wrap them individually and pop them in the freezer. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you next time.